Hello guys, thank you for joining us here in Poly in Color. My name is Chris, and for those of you that haven't joined us at all yet, we want to say welcome. And if you find this informational and informative, please do hit the subscribe button. We're going to have a lot of content coming out that we hope will be very useful and progressive and informative for you guys out there. So with that being said, before we even jump into this, let's give you a little brief overview of why we are actually creating this channel, why we're creating this space, and why we're trying to sit and speak with lovely people such as yourself right now. Definitely, if you haven't noticed, the title is called Poly in Color, right? So what we really wanted to structure this channel around was being polyamorous and also being black, brown, or a person of color, and how polyamory has shown up for individuals such as us, right? There hasn't been a lot of places that I found when I was just getting into polyamory where I could look at someone and see someone that embodied and or looked like me. You know, was there a safe space for me to get the information that I was seeking? How could I get educated? How do I start this? What do I do? What are going to be the problems? What does this look like, right? And that's not to say that there are not spaces out there where you can get that information. You know, as you kind of dive into this a little bit more, you will find your own circle, your own network, because there are places where you can get polyamorous information. However, if you're just trying to start this out, it's not the most easy to find if you don't know what you're doing, right? So with that being said, I do want to give a small disclaimer. This is no way specific. I'm not a professional in the polyamorous space. I don't have any licenses or anything like that, so I don't want anyone to get 100% concrete over the technicality of it all. This is just going to be my my personal journey with polyamory. Later on, you're going to hear from my partner. You're going to hear his words too and things that he's gone through. It's just how we've experienced it. And I think that's so important to really get a real live view of what poly looks like, what poly feels like, what the breadth of poly, and just basically how it starts from beginning to middle to end. And that's really what we want to take you through. So for those of you, right, you're thinking about being polyamorous, how did it start for me? Initially, when I got into relationships in general, I always found myself longing for more. Like, I've always loved my partners, don't get me wrong. I always loved the connection and the relationships that I built with my partners, but I always felt like I could see another person and still build more with that other individual, right? So I could have great sex with this individual, but I could have a wonderful conversation with this individual. Now, I was brought up in a very conservative household. I was raised seeing mom with dad, grandma with grandpa, going 10, 20, 30 years plus. And those were the norms that I was used to. So even though I had some of these thoughts, I didn't really have a safe place or an outlet to voice them. And even though they were in my brain, I didn't really know how to get them out. So poly for me in the beginning wasn't even poly at all. It was just simply an idea. So as I started to venture into my later 20s, I found myself in a relationship with an older gentleman. That's typically what I was attracted to, because I liked people with stability. I liked people that knew what direction they were going in life. And that's a whole nother story, because age doesn't mean you're stable. So we'll cover that another day. But with that being said, in that particular relationship, my partner at the time came to me a couple months in saying that he felt that my sexual drive was just a little too high strung for his. And he offered up the opportunity, or suggested the opportunity, that I explore other sexual outlets. At first, it was a little offensive to me, to be honest with you, because I had always grown up in relationships where, you know, we didn't talk about that. Even if it was something you wanted to do, no one was voicing anything like that. So when it was said to me, it was a blow. It was a hit in my gut. But I sat on it for a day and I was like, you know what? Let's give it a try. I was in Miami. It was a whole new life for me. So I was like, let me kind of break out of this shell. So indeed, I went out and I explored my other sexual side with other partners. Now, I don't want to bullshit you guys, because I want to keep it 100% real. Have I cheated in the past when I was younger? Abso-fucking-lutely. I have done it. But what I had never done and what I had never experienced is having sex with someone else with my partner's permission and they knowing it's going on and still being able to come back home and be loved the same way you left out. So I really want to touch on that for just a brief moment, right? So anyway, I started this whole thing of going out and having relationships with other individuals. But for me, it wasn't fulfilling. I'm more grounded in nature. I love the idea of relationship and stability and waking up and seeing you and knowing who you are. And so I was feeling a little unfulfilled. So I wanted to change this up. I didn't really want to be spreading my joy all around Miami. So I brought it up to my partner and said, why don't we try this a different way? Why don't we try dating someone? So we did that, but we didn't get to the dating part, but we did try to meet other gentlemen and have sexual encounters with them together. Now that relationship, it did not last. And I'll spare you the details of why it didn't last. No, it had nothing to do with poly. It was just not the correct partner, not the correct season. It just wasn't sown in the universe for me, so that relationship didn't last. But I took a lot of wonderful notes from that relationship. So when that relationship concluded, I found myself in another relationship, didn't really go well, and then another after that, didn't really go well. By that time I hit, my later 20s, and I was in a place in life where I was like, I'm looking for something stable. I really want to have a relationship where it's solid, it's strong, and on top of that, I just feel comfortable and I'm honest about who I am. So when I moved to Dallas, Texas, I had a wonderful opportunity in running into my partner, my forever partner right now. And it was a few months into our relationship that I wanted to disclose some information to him. I experienced poly in the past, but I really, really, really loved it so much that it was something that I wanted to take further in the future. I wanted to explore it and I wanted to do it and make it actually work. I wanted to see it and create it. But I was really nervous to present this information because we built our relationship on a one-on-one foundation, and poly was never a part of that conversation. I never spoke about any of this prior to getting with him. So I was nervous, but I picked up the phone and told him I had something to talk to him about, and I came home that night and I sat and disclosed to him that poly was something that I had been involved with before. But again, it wasn't poly that I said, but I guess you could say having multiple partners was something that I had been involved with before, and I wanted to give it a go and wanted to see how he felt about it. I was nervous. Was he going to want to stay with me? Was he going to want to leave me? Was he going to dump me? How was this going to come off? Because I had deep feelings for him at the time, and I didn't want my truth to scare him away. But I also thought it was so important at that juncture in my life to give all of myself, to remove the veil of who I was and let a person see not just me, but also see all of me at that time. So I'm going to go ahead and bring my partner in just a moment because I think it's really important, because this is where he comes into the story of how it felt for him when I started speaking about poly and what his emotions and what his thought process was when all of this started. So I'm going to go ahead and bring my partner in. His name is Kolya. And so everyone say hello to Kolya. This is my partner. You'll see him quite a bit. Say hi, Kolya.
Good evening, everyone. How are y'all doing tonight?
So yeah, he can explain now what it felt like for him. Tell them what it was like when you experienced the conversation that I had with you early on with poly. How did it go for you?
So when Chris first introduced the idea to me, whenever he called and said he wanted to speak, and then he came home and we had that conversation, it was a shocker to say the least. Because it wasn't anything that we'd ever discussed. I wasn't expecting to have that conversation. And of course, there was a number of questions that ran through my mind of, oh my gosh, well, I've never thought about this before. I'm not polyamorous. Monogamy is all I've ever known. Will the relationship work out at this point? All those things were running through my head. But at the time, Chris was kind of like, hey, I understand that all those questions running through your head. Let me ask you this one, and let's see what your perspective is on it. And he asked, he was like, if you were able to go have sex with someone and then come back home, how would you feel about me? Would you still feel the same way? And I took a couple of moments to think about it, and I told him that I would feel the same way. It wouldn't sway how I felt about him, because that can't be changed because I had sex with someone else. And from there, he was like, maybe this is something that we can give a try. Now, of course, polyamory is just not about sex. It's an aspect, just like it is with any relationship. At that point, with the knowledge that we had, that was the question that he posed. So from there, we then bought books, we researched, and we had our own personal journey with polyamory. And just like with anything, you learn, you grow, you make mistakes, and all you can try to do is do better than what you did the day prior.
Yeah, and let me jump in right there, because after, we had the conversation about poly and getting started with it, once I kind of got a slow agreement from him with wanting to get into it, that is when we began to try it out. Let me tell you this. We started off what I would like to say incorrect. I'm going to use that word incorrect as a loose gesture, because what was incorrect for us may not be what's incorrect for you, right? And so remember, this is our take, this is our narrative, but just because it's our story, our philosophies, doesn't make it ironclad. We're just going to share how it showed up for us. So we led with sex, and I want to say that out loud. So when we started, we of course jumped on all those lovely apps that are out there. There's about 10 million of them now, stating that we were a couple looking for another to enter into our relationship, just however we wanted to surmise that into our profile. And we got hit up quite a bit. And so I felt like we were going through our little neighborhood like potato chips at the time. It was guy after guy after guy. Yeah. The problem of what we were doing is we weren't creating any substance. There was conversation, don't get me wrong, but that conversation quickly led to that guy coming over within 24 to 48 hours. That 24 to 48 hours ran into us being a sexual object, but we allowed it.
Very true. And it just turned into a vicious cycle. Mm-hmm. And after a while, we became fatigued, because obviously when you're just leading with sex all the time, you're not getting to know a person, you're not forming boundaries, you're not getting consent, you're not getting really anything to be able to set a stable foundation for what could be a potential relationship. So, of course, we kept running into pitfalls, guy after guy, here one day, gone the next, and then a new one comes in 15 minutes later. It was just, it was draining, and it was taxing after a while. And we had reached a point of, wait, something's not right. We keep dealing with this. We keep going through all this. And the only thing we're getting out of it is being drained and exhausted, mentally, physically, emotionally, all those things. And
that was the time when you wanted to shut it down, almost, in essence.
Yeah, I was totally done. I was just like, we're fine, just us two. We're not trying to meet another person to fix or do anything with our relationship.
Keyword being fixed.
Right. So we can just be a couple. We can, do this thing called life and be just fine. So I was like, that's where I was at. I was like, I'm good. That was a good run. It's a story now that we can share about, but we can go ahead and move on from this.
Where he was at the part where he wanted to stop, I'm not going to lie, I did not. I felt like in my soul, in my body, there was something so beautiful in this. And I woke up a lot of sleepless nights just feeling like I was making a mistake, and still feeling the pressure of having to come back to my partner after shutting this down. And I partially agreed to shut it down, coming back and saying, I don't think we made the right decision. And at that time, the stress of, is he now going to even feel like more than anything that because I bring this back up again, he's not good enough. So that was scary for me again. So I had to pick up the phone and call him and let him know, because at that time I was out of town, so I couldn't have a face-to-face conversation with him, and let him know that, I thought that we were making a mistake. And I think at that time we had to dissect how we were handling poly. What was causing the stress? What were we doing wrong there, and what could we do better, right? At that time, we realized quickly that Kolya did not like being a part of what we now call the vetting process, finding a man and bringing him in. That was very draining to him personally. And so we had agreed on at that time that we would remove him from that process, and I would totally take over searching for our partner. And I think that brought him a lot more positivity, because he could just focus on us, or focus on just simply doing, without having the stressors of, going through 10 men a day and eliminating the ones which usually end up being the 10 men that you found. You have to eliminate 10 of them. And that being a revolving door and a revolving cycle can be emotionally taxing. So I think working it that way allowed a little bit more breathing room in our poly journey. So from there...
Oh, I just want to add some clarification. And just to add some clarification too, even though I'm not well versed in the vetting process, so to speak, it is emotionally taxing, the constant monotony of going through and talking to each person and going over the initial conversation and those initial details of getting to know someone. That is not my forte. Even when I was completely single, it was still exhausting then. However, because Chris and I discussed it, we both felt it was a good idea for him to kind of take over that part. He would bring me into the conversation of, hey, I've gotten to know this person. He seems pretty cool. He, of course, knows about you. I think it's at a point, the conversation with him can now bring you into it as well, and then all three of us can converse to kind of see what the vibe is, how everyone's meshing. You can also form your opinion of this person, and then we can kind of go from there and decide if this is going to be a situation that could potentially work.
Absolutely.
So I was not unincluded in the process. It's just the initial part that I wasn't a part of. However, he was still communicating to me what was going on and who he was speaking with.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like what he said was, it was never blind, but the pieces that he didn't want to have, I didn't share. And let me take a pause right there and let's touch on this. It is so important when you are attempting poly, if you are in a relationship, because there's a difference between being single and wanting to be poly, and being in a relationship and trying to bring someone into your relationship. They work the same, but they don't operate fully the same, right? It is my job and his job to communicate as partners what our needs are. What do we want? What don't we want? How do we want this to go? How do we want this to not work? Communication is key. If you are in a relationship now and you are trying to open up your relationship to poly, sit down and talk. That is what you really want to do. Talk about all of these things. Even if we rewind back when we were just in the sexual space, again, not to bullshit you. You think this was easy? Hell no. To let your partner right? Or to see your partner have sex with someone for the first time can be an overwhelming amount of emotions. It really can, depending on how you're set up.
Most definitely.
All right. And I think it's so important that you make space for those emotions. They're going to come. And when those emotions happen, if you have to stop and take a breather, if you have to sit down and you have to talk about it, you need to do that. You don't want your relationship falling apart because you're trying to do something new, but you don't want to lay down this foundation thinking it's just going to be perfect and roses when you start bringing people into a situation and doing things that you have no traction, you have no history in doing. This is new. But I do think that if you hear us out and if you stick with us as we continue on with our journey and we share our tidbits, you won't have to go through some of the things that we went through. We went through this the the hard way.
Absolutely.
Until we had to find out a more easy way. And I'll say that more easy because it's never just easy. It still brings its difficulties even today. But at least now we have a set of tools that we can utilize and structure to make this a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for?
Smoother.
Yeah, smooth,
a little bit smoother.
Yeah, smoother.
And I would say, if you're a couple considering, opening up your relationship and bringing another person or people into it for a polyamorous relationship, I would certainly say make sure that you guys' foundation is solid. The communication is solid, because a lot of those things are going to be very useful to you all as you embark on that journey. You're going to need to talk a lot. Everything is going to be on the table. You're going to want to converse about everything. You're going to have questions. You're going to be dealing with a lot of different emotions that you've never dealt with before. And it's tough. So I would definitely say make sure everything is solid before you embark on it.
So even with that being said, some of the hiccups that I had, right? One thing I didn't let you know, and this is when we're creating this because, again, poly in color, right? We have two men of African descent of some sort sitting in front of you, and we didn't have this picture anywhere that we could look, right? No. We didn't have anyone that looked like us trying to create something like this that we could see.
And even in the books that we've read, there weren't any gay couples that we came across. It was always from a heterosexual perspective in those books. So all we could do was translate those concepts and that information and take whatever we felt was applicable to us.
Just drop our characters in the narrative and then try to recreate it to make it work for us. And even though it was somewhat of a decent baseline, it really was never a great depiction of what we were going through. So I think that was a part of our struggle as well. One of the hiccups that I came into, and I don't know if you can tell with the camera, we've got a little lighting over here, but Cole is a little bit more fair-skinned than I am. I've got a lot more African features of some sort in some places. I've got a wider nose and some just distinct features. And when we were dating and we were doing the vetting, or not, we were trying to date, doing the vetting process, we encountered a lot of racism and a lot of division. So poly folks, especially if there is a difference in your relationship, if you're two different shades of black, if you look different, if your body sizes are different, even if you have a interracial couple going on, you need to be prepared. The people are going to be rude. I've been called monkey, nigger, dark water, you name it. I've heard those comments coming from these dating spaces, and not just from men that were white. This came from men that actually were black as well. Latinos sometimes would gravitate to him more because they thought he had more of a exotic look. And so you would find people that would get into our inbox and they would slowly try to divide us. So and later on, as we get into this, we're going to have just a whole cover of tips and tricks. But still, as we kind of go through this, we still want to give just little gems, depending on where you are right now. Because if you're in the introductory phase, I think this is still so important because you need this. Do not get frustrated with people that are trying to divide you. Expect it. If you expect it and you're prepared for it, you don't have to get frustrated when it comes, right? So a lot of times when a guy would hit us up, the first question they ask you is,
who am I speaking to?
Who am I speaking to? You know why they're doing that? Am I speaking to the dark one? Am I speaking to the light one? Am I speaking to the skinny one? Or am I speaking to the fat one? Depending on what they're looking at, they're already sitting in there trying to figure out which one they're talking to because they want to be taught. For instance, if they like the light one, guess who they want to be talking to? The light one. So at first, I would always answer, you're speaking to me. Or if Kolya happened to be on a day, which was really rare, if there was a day he was there, he would also say, he was speaking. But when they do that, you start seeing that they start dividing you out. Polyamorous has nothing to do about division. And let me say that again. Polyamory has nothing to do about division, unless you decide to structure your relationship that way, right? And let me make that very clear. You can. But for us, it had nothing to do about division. It had everything to do about inclusion. So how do you let these strangers know that most of them are not informed? 99.9% of the community out here does not know what polyamory is. Matter of fact, they're probably going to call it polygamy.
Or just a convenient excuse to cheat.
That open relationship, not the same thing, not the same structure. What we could like to call ourselves is a closed polytriad, and I think there's another phrase for it.
No, it's polyfidelitous.
Polyfidelitous, yes. So that is how we structure our relationship. So now, you know what you say to someone who's coming in and trying to figure out who they're speaking to? We're both here. That's what you do.
That real quick.
You say, oh, both of us, we're sitting right next to each other. Mm-hmm. They'll be like, oh no, but which one? Both of us, we're both here. When you do that, you immediately let them know, even if your partner's not there, lie. I should be saying. let them know. We don't lie now, but in the beginning of this, guys, we did, because we had to get our sea legs. We had to figure out how to get our strength of how to talk from a poly mindset, because we still had a monogamous outlook on life, and so we didn't have our poly language yet. And because we hadn't had that strengthened yet, we had to use certain things to make it comfortable, and we were crawling until we could
begin to walk.
Until we could begin to walk, exactly. So we said both of us, and that eliminated the stress of this, because you're going to find quickly that they'll fall right off really quick. If there's a partner they don't like, they'll drop off the map. Now here's the thing: if you're trying to introduce someone into your relationship together, why are you bringing somebody in who's not attracted to both of you? How does that make sense? Or even to take this into deeper layers, you could be attracted to my lovely partner's face. You could be attracted to my dick. You could be attracted to his ass. You could be attracted to my body hair, and I don't really have much of it, but my leg hair, whatever. You could be attracted to different things on different partners. It isn't that the attraction needs to be the same. You don't have to be attracted to the same features on us, but it is important that there be something to be attracted to, something to glue you or hold you together in the dynamic of poly to make you feel good. Some partners' sex doesn't matter. It's not on the top of their list. Sometimes a partner wants more intimacy, or and so like, well, what's important to you? Like in poly, what do you find to be more important to you?
Well, honestly, I think it depends on the personal connection that I can have with that person. It can range from just it being more intimacy that I enjoy and there still being sex involved, or there could be more of a visceral physical attraction. So that would probably amp up the sexual level, but there still be intimacy that can be had. I think what is so cool about polyamory is that you can enjoy different things from different people.
Absolutely.
And not have the same expectations from one person to the next, and be able to celebrate those differences with everyone. That's what I think is the cool thing about polyamory.
And I think he hit it right on the nail. So for me, I love being able to have deep intellectual stimulation from my partner, and that transcends into deep sexual intercourse for me. And they're intertwined. Kolia and I are pretty much hand in hand in what we do. However, our sexual energy is not always the same. It's not.
Right.
And that doesn't mean a marriage has to fall apart, a relationship has to fall apart, or you guys love each other any less, because a lot of people come into, and the first thing they want to know is, what's wrong in your relationship?
Right.
Why do you need another person in your relationship? What's the deficit? What's the problem? What I think really kind of got us sailing into poly was understanding that one person doesn't have to be your everything. So, and let me give you my philosophy for those people that seem to think that they can't do polyamory, because you hear that a lot. Do you have a friend? Do you have multiple friends? Did you hang out with your friend this week? Did you go out to dinner? Did y'all have good conversation? Did you have an acquaintance you went to hang out with, right? And you built bonds outside of your partner or your partners in the past. Now let's go and let's just take the shit off of this real quick and call it out for what it is. How many of y'all are out here sleeping with other people, not telling your partner that you do have, that you slept with somebody else, and then say you can't do poly? But you surely can pick up, get in your car, drive to somebody else's house 30 miles away, sit and have an intimate sexual encounter with them, a conversation with them, wash up, put your clothes back on, come back home, and not even tell your partner you did it. But you don't have the capacity to do poly. Sex doesn't mean everything. Sex doesn't structure poly. It's a piece of living. It is a piece of poly, but it is not all of poly. If you can sit and have an intimate conversation with a friend, and you can sit and have an intimate conversation with your partner, and you can do that in one space and agree to do that in one home, or however you want to structure that, it's poly. Yeah. It's poly. So it's really just taking the old mindset of how a relationship has to be formed, turning it off, and allowing yourself to have a new space and a new way of thinking. And when we were able to do that, I feel like, fireworks kind of went off for us, right?
Because, we opened our mind and we opened our hearts. And, of course, we continued to research and learn more so that we could become more well-versed in this lifestyle that we were wanting to really tap into. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really the biggest part, is to educate yourselves, do the research, read, get books, watch podcasts, or listen to podcasts, mm-hmm. but all of those things that helps to further enrich you, because then you get to see other people that are dealing with these different relationship dynamics, and you get to make space for how they do things and realize, okay, well, what they do works, or it doesn't work for me. This is what I want for my own.
Yeah. So guys, when we hit our next video, we're going to take you on the journey of us entering into our first poly relationship. We are not going to do it today. We don't have time, but even past not having time tonight, we really wanted to set y'all up tonight with just the introduction. What I want to leave you with, because if you are in this introductory phase of poly, I want to leave you with some gems. And this is going to hit heavy, but hopefully it hits you heavy in a really good place. Poly will not fix it. Let me say that again. Poly will not fix it. If you are bad at communication today, you are going to be bad in a poly relationship. You're going to see it times 2 or times 3, depending on how many of that relationship. If you had sexual issues with a past partner that you left unresolved, it is going to be a problem in your poly relationship. What I want to structure and say is, you need to come into a poly situation healed, right? Do your work. Do your own work. Even in this relationship, his work is not my work. Yeah. What he needs to fix is not what I need to fix. Be accountable to your own problems, especially if you're just single walking into a couple's relationship. Also, single folks that want to walk into someone's relationship, how do they work? You might want to look at that.
Questions.
Ask, right? If you're walking into their relationship and they don't even know how to solve an argument, what makes you think that you're going to come into that relationship and be able to solve y'all's arguments? There's a lot of energy and a lot of bodies. So one of the best tips and advice that I think we can give in the beginning of this is slow down. We know you're eager to get out there and try it. We're excited for you to get out here and try it, but please take your time in getting to know yourself. What are your triggers? What's your salary like? What's your education like? What are your sexual needs? Are there STDs you need to be talking about that are on the table? What are the hiccups and the ticks, the things that make you tick? Are you in tune with that? Because you shouldn't be walking into a relationship presenting that when you don't know. And I think also another big thing to structure and to really say is there's no difference between monogamy and poly when it comes to problems. If you have problems in a monogamous situation, those problems are going to resurface in the poly situation. And that's
absolutely
right? That's why we like to say poly isn't going to fix it. Just because your monogamous relationships haven't been working, you're like, I've been here, I've tried that.
Oh,
All these.
let's spice it up.
Yep, let's spice it. Bring somebody in the bedroom. Our sex is going awful. Now we're just gonna fix our sexual issues with poly. Wrong. It's not happening.
It doesn't fix it.
Doesn't fix it at all. You need to be talking, if you are in a relationship, to the partner and working out y'all's problems before you bring somebody in. And we learned this the hard way. If you stack something onto a shaky foundation, what's happening, y'all?
It's gonna crumble and fall.
Crumble and fall. Do not place weight on shaky foundations. If your relationship is not solid, if your communication is not solid, and y'all don't have a good basis, stop. People's lives, hearts, emotions, money, time, etc. is involved. You need to know yourself. None of us are perfect. We will do the best that we can, right? And even when you think you've solved a problem, another problem is bound to arise later. That's just what we call life.
Yeah.
But with that being said, slow down. Get to know yourself.
And don't succumb to the new relationship energy either. Don't get caught up in the, oh, everything's so new. They're so wonderful. Don't get caught up in it. Stay level-headed.
That'll be a whole nother new relationship energy. That'll be a whole nother topic itself that we'll get into, because guess who did that?
We did.
We did it. So we'll talk about how to not do that stuff too. So I hope this information was really informative for you guys. I hope you guys really enjoyed us. If you're watching this again, like I said, there's any questions you have that are related to this topic, please drop them down. We will try to make sure that we comment on those. And if it's really good stuff you want to hear, you want to see, you want to ask, present it. Present. We're going to be here with you, because what we want to do for our community is we want to represent our community. We want to show that there are level-headed, educated, sexy, smart men out here that are in this polyamorous space that are just doing the damn thing. I think sometimes we run into this stuff and people just broken as fuck all over the damn place. And you're like, what the fuck? You start running out of poly because you can't even find shit that you really enjoy. So we're here, we exist. And if you want to know, yes, we are poly single. I'm gonna make that a term. We are poly single, so we are free for the taking right now. But we wanted to start this because whenever our forever third partner enters our life, please come. Whenever they do come, and we want to share that with y'all. We want even that to be a part of the story. So when we do find our third, hopefully you guys will get to meet them and they get to share their experience coming into our dynamic. But anyway, we want to thank y'all for tuning in. It's been a pleasure.
Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. If any of this resonated with you, definitely be sure to like, comment, or subscribe. And also be sure to hit the notification bell so that you can be notified when we drop new videos.
Good night, y'all.